Aiden explains that there were 5 slash-and-burn farming villages in the Forest of Death. Aiden, the first village we reached was completely destroyed. It was a massacre. No survivors, no buildings left standing. We were terrified, so we hurried to the second village, only to find it in the same condition. The third village, the same, wiped out. They moved with growing despair toward the fourth village. Tyan, standing before the devastation, shook with fury. Tyan, angrily, this is the fourth one. And the last 3 villages, they weren't any different from this. The guards began searching for survivors, but they found none. Aiden and Tyan also searched, with Aiden's thoughts racing. Aiden, thinking, did no one survive here either? Even a farming village like this should have had some defense. How did such a one-sided massacre happen? These can't be ordinary bandits. Who on earth are these people? Suddenly, one of the guards called out, his voice filled with urgency. Guards shouting survivors. There are survivors here. Hearing this, Tyan's face showed deep regret. He had failed to protect his people. 2 children, a boy and a girl, were found, trembling in fear. One of the guards gritted his teeth as he lifted a piece of debris that had shielded them from the fire. Guard beside Tyan. It looks like they dodged the flames by hiding under the debris. Tyan knelt before the children, extending a hand gently. Tyan softly, we're the Knights of Cetus. We've come to protect you. You're safe now. The children, faces red with tears, cried harder at his words. The boy, in disbelief, asked, Boy, tearfully, the Knights of Cetus, are you really here to protect us? Suddenly the girl leaped forward and hugging Tyan tightly. Tyan, momentarily flustered, gently patted the little girl's back. Tyan, apologetically, I'm sorry we were late. The boy then fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Boy pleading, if you're really knights, then please, save our parents too. Tyan's heart sank. He looked at the boy, sorrow in his eyes. Tyan, softly, with regret. I'm sorry, but I'm sure your parents have gone to a very peaceful place. The boy suddenly shouted, his voice filled with desperation. Boys shouting no. The attackers dragged our parents and everyone else to another place. Our parents are definitely still alive. Hearing this, Tyan became furious, clenching his fists tightly as his teeth ground together. Tyan, angrily, what? They took everyone alive? Tyan stormed out of the fourth village, seething with rage. Aiden, walking beside him, was confused, his thoughts racing. Aiden, thinking, why would they take all the villagers instead of killing them? What could they possibly want? We don't have enough information, but maybe we'll find some clues in the last village. As they made their way toward the 5th village, Aiden suddenly heard something. He called out urgently. Aiden whispering, Tyan, someone's here. Tyan's anger flared even hotter. His eyes turned red with fury as he unsheathed his sword. Tyan, growling, is it those scum? Great. I'll make sure they pay for their sins right now. Just then, Tyan saw something that made him freeze in place. Several figures appeared, preparing to attack. The knights, along with Lo, readied their weapons. But before they could engage, Tyan shouted. Tyan, shouting, everyone stop. Both Aiden and Lena turned to Tyan, shocked by his command. Tyan's expression softened, and a small smile crept onto his face. Tyan, calming, it's not the bandits. As they lowered their weapons, a man from the opposing group gave a similar order. Opposing leader, stand down. It was the head of the 5th village, Marcus. He stepped forward, addressing Tyan with concern. Marcus, worried. Tyan, why are you here? Are you here to help us? Aiden, still confused, turned to Tyan. Aiden, curious, do you know him? Tyan, with a mix of happiness and sorrow, nodded. Tyan softly, he used to be a knight in the Cetus Order about 10 years ago. I heard he left after a serious injury, but I never expected to find him here. Tyan approached Marcus, his sword still in hand. He smirked, though his voice carried an edge of nostalgia. Tyan teasing Marcus, that's a pretty cold greeting. Marcus, his fists clenched, looked down apologetically. Marcus, regretful, I'm sorry. Bandits have been showing up more and more lately, so I couldn't afford to greet you casually. He glanced at Tyan and managed a faint smile. Marcus, smiling, "You've improved quite a bit since I last saw you. I almost didn't recognize you." Tyan suddenly placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. He lowered his head, his voice soft but filled with relief. "Tyan, grateful. Thank God you're okay." Marcus, startled by Tyan's words, looked at him in shock. His expression changed quickly as dread filled his eyes. Marcus, fearful, "Don't tell me, the other villages, they've already been?" Tyan's face tightened with worry as he turned to Marcus. "The other villages, they've been ambushed. There are barely any survivors. It's a relief, at least, that your village is still standing." Tyan raised his head, but Marcus looked at him sharply. "Fine, you say? It's late. I'll take you to my village first." As they entered Marcus' village, a man lay on the ground, clutching his belly, writhing in excruciating pain. Purple energy pulsed from his wound. Beside him, another villager knelt, his voice trembling. "Why won't the potion work? How can I treat him?" Aiden stepped forward, assessing the situation with a calm, sharp gaze. "You won't be able to heal that with a regular potion." He reached into his pack and handed over a glowing vial. "Here, take this. It's a holy potion." The man who received it gasped, astonished. "Are you really giving us this? A holy potion? It's priceless." He bowed his head in gratitude, murmuring his thanks. Aiden's face hardened as he stood tall and shouted to the crowd, "Listen up. Anyone whose wounds are emitting dark light has been struck by black demonic energy. Regular potions won't work on them. Come to me for holy potions. It's the only way to treat those wounds." Aiden moved quickly, distributing the potions one by one. Inwardly, he sighed in relief, thinking to himself, "Good thing I packed a ton of holy potions in my subspace pocket." Underlord smirked. "I thought you cared more about money than saving lives." "This is a surprise?" Aiden's jaw tightened. Anger flashed in his eyes as he gritted his teeth. "What do you take me for? Of course, it's not free. Tyne's going to pay me back with interest. And besides, I can't let those chaos bastards have their way." Underlord chuckled. "As expected of you." Suddenly, a man approached, holding a child tightly in his arms. "Can you help him too?" he pleaded. "Of course," Aiden started, but then he froze, eyes narrowing as he looked closer. The child was wrapped in cloth, appearing human at first glance, but something was off. As Aiden inspected more carefully, he realized with shock that this was no human. It was an ant, and it too was wounded, the same dark, purple energy seeping from its injuries. Meanwhile, near the village, bandits were approaching. One of them sneered. "Those losers we kicked out of the city. They fought back hard, but it wasn't enough." Another bandit grinned darkly. "That one-armed old man is mine. Don't mess with him." As the bandits marched toward the village, they weren't alone. A dark mage, cloaked in ominous robes, walked among them. One of the bandits glanced at the mage and sneered. "You couldn't use your powers last time. This time, give it everything you've got, all right? After all, that's how we help each other out, right? We get all the food and money from these villages, and you get the people. That's the deal, isn't it?" The black mage turned, his expression cold and disdainful. "Ignorant fools. All you have is brute strength, and yet you never stop talking. Just move the captives to the place I told you about." The bandit, irritated, muttered under his breath, "Damn black mages." Meanwhile, the black mage's thoughts were far darker. "Once we're finished here, I'll use these bandits too," he mused, a sinister smile creeping onto his face. Red energy began to swirl around him, radiating a palpable evil. "These people should be enough for my research," he thought, relishing the power coursing through him. In a dimly lit room, two small candles on the side table cast a soft glow across the space. The ant slowly opened her eyes, blinking in confusion. Where am I?" she murmured. Aiden, who was sitting beside her, looked up. "You're awake." The ant's eyes widened in shock. She sat up abruptly, her voice trembling as she cried, "Please don't kill me." She clutched her chest, sobbing. "I'm not tasty. Please don't eat me." Aiden sighed, resting his hand on his knee. "I'm not going to eat you, so stop crying and don't be scared." Just then, Aiden's mouth parted slightly, and a bit of drool slipped from the corner as if something tasty was right in front of him. His eyes lit up with excitement. Underlord, watching, rolled his eyes. How is she supposed to believe you won't eat her when you're making that face? Flustered, trying to reassure her. I'm telling you, I won't eat you. My Alex, no, I mean it. Despite his attempts, the ant burst into louder sobs, pleading, I'm poisonous. If you eat me, you'll definitely get a stomachache. Trying to change the atmosphere, Aiden pulled out a pouch of lichbone powder. As he opened it, the scent wafted toward the ant. Her nose twitched, and she looked up, her eyes brightening. Is it really okay for me to eat this? She asked timidly. Aiden grinned. That's right. I don't need the bone powder anyway. He handed it to her, and she hesitantly took a nibble. Her eyes lit up, and soon, she was devouring it with obvious enjoyment. It's delicious, she exclaimed, a satisfied look on her face. Aiden watched her, both amused and fascinated. Wow, she's really into lichbone powder. Underlord leaned in, cheeks slightly flushed with pride. I told you, ants can't resist lichbone powder. Aren't you glad you listened to me? Aiden chuckled. Thanks. Then, leaning closer to the ant, he asked gently, but why were you injured and unconscious in the forest? At this, the ant froze. The others, the people running with me, where are they? Aiden's face softened. The people who brought you here told us that you were the only one they found, injured and lying unconscious in the forest. They didn't see anyone else with you. The ant's expression darkened, her voice barely a whisper. Could it be? She trailed off, a silent worry flickering in her eyes. Aiden leaned closer, his voice sincere. Do you know what's happening in the forest? If you tell me the truth, I might be able to help. The ant looked down, confused and conflicted. Mom and Dad told me not to trust humans. Suddenly, a bell clanged loudly throughout the village, followed by the urgent shouts of the guards. We're under attack. One guard bellowed, and another yelled, the bandits are back. Aiden's head whipped toward the gate as he rubbed his chin. Ah, those bandits again. Turning back to the ant, he said calmly, Look, I can't help if you keep quiet. Just hide here for now. The ant began to cry again, thought. I can only hope he's not like other humans. Then, almost in a whisper, he called after Aiden. Wait, can you really help our forest? Are you different from the others? Aiden paused, visibly startled for a moment, as he looked back at the ant. Outside, the bandits charged toward the village with wild shouts. Let's wipe them out completely, one bellowed. Not a single one of these rats gets away, roared another. The Cetus Knights quickly moved forward to meet the assault, their voices steady and resolute. Protect the village. Stand firm and don't fear these bandits. The knights lined up, forming ranks, shields raised in anticipation. But then, behind the charging bandits, the black mage raised his hand, dark magic crackling with purple energy. His eyes glinted as he muttered to himself, I don't recognize these men. Knights of this territory? Well, more sacrifices for my offering. That's not so bad. Then he called out in a chilling voice, Rise, dead ones. Moments later, corpses emerged from the ground, clawing their way back to life. The knights closest to the undead recoiled, teeth gritted in horror. The undead, what? One of them gasped. Another groaned, Ugh, I've never fought the undead before. Just then, Priestess Lena strode forward, her gaze unwavering. She looked toward the black mage with disdain. So, you're the sinner behind this wickedness. A knight turned to her, alarmed. Priestess Lena, it's dangerous. Let us handle the bandits. You take care of the undead, he called. Tyne stepped up behind the knights, his voice calm. Just let Lena do her thing. The knights exchanged uneasy glances, tension written across their faces. One muttered, But there are so many of them. Sweat glistened on Tyne's brow as he spoke quietly. You might not know this, but there's no one better suited to this situation than her. He paused, his voice grim. A mad priestess with the face of an angel, a warrior of carnage who brings death in the name of her god. At that moment, Lena gripped her weapon tightly and launched herself into the air. Tyne watched her ascent, muttering, That's what a priest of the divine carnage cult is like. In midair, Luina's eyes shone a fierce, wild red, and a crazed smile spread across her face. She shouted, "Death to those who have incurred bad karma." With a powerful swing, she came crashing down with brute force, slamming into the ground. The impact shattered the earth, and a shockwave rippled outward, hitting all the bandits and undead in the area. The black mage's eyes went wide, and he gritted his teeth, whispering, "What is that? Where did a monster like her come from?" Luina landed gracefully, a serene look replacing her earlier frenzy. She murmured, "O god of death and carnage, by your name, allow your servant to wield this power." With another swing of her weapon, she sent a massive shockwave, and nearby enemies were flung backward. The black mage's face twisted with rage as he watched his summoned undead and bandits fall in mere seconds. She took out the bandits and the undead in just 2 hits, damn her. With fury, he raised his hand, chanting darkly. Purple, malicious energy coiled around his fingers, reaching out toward Luina. "O curse of death, devour that crazy woman," he snarled. But as the dark energy shot toward her, Luina suddenly vanished. The black mage staggered, searching in confusion. What? Where did she go? In the next instant, Luina appeared behind him, descending from the air, her weapon poised to strike. Sensing something, the black mage whirled around. His face went pale, sweat pouring down in terror. He barely had time to react before Lena struck him with a crushing blow, sending blood splattering. Meanwhile, the knights pressed forward, surrounding the remaining bandits. One knight ran up to Tyan. "We've rounded up all the remaining bandits." Tyan nodded, sighing. "Good work," but his face darkened with confusion. "Did they say what they did with the villagers they captured?" The knight glanced at the bandits, a worried frown on his face. "Well, they're not exactly sure. They only took what they could sell and said they dropped the villagers off where the archmage instructed." Tyan's expression shifted to shock. "What?" He turned back to the knight, frustration mounting. "So, the dark mage is dead. Does that mean there's no way for us to rescue the villagers?" Suddenly, Aiden appeared, stepping forward with a determined expression. "There's a way, Tyan." Hearing his voice, Tyan turned, anger flashing in his eyes. "Where have you been all this time, Aiden?" He paused, the tension easing slightly as he asked, "Wait, there's a way for us to find the villagers?" Aiden moved closer, nodding. "Yes, there's a way." But he hesitated, frustration etched on his face. "We don't have much time. We need to hurry." Earlier, the inn had revealed to Aiden that the dark mages had taken many other ints, and Aiden had been shaken by the news. "What? Seriously?" he'd asked, barely containing his shock. The int nodded, explaining, "Yes, they captured me too and locked me up, but I managed to escape. And it's not just ints, they've taken many humans as well." Aiden had clenched his jaw, placing a hand under his chin as he considered the dark mage's motives. Gathering humans and ints together. Could they be preparing a massive summoning ritual? Or turning them into undead? His thoughts darkened, and his eyes flickered with red rage. "I won't tolerate this. How dare they mess with my precious elixir?" Underlord had watched, unimpressed. "What kind of person are you?" Now, back in the present, Aiden relayed all of this to Tyan. Tyan's fists clenched, his teeth grinding. "Filthy bastards. What on earth are they planning?" Aiden shook his head. "I don't know for sure, but someone who escaped told me where they're hiding. I'm planning on going there to spy on them and gather more information." Tyan straightened, his eyes determined. "Leave that to us. It happened in our territory, so it's only right for us to handle it." Aiden placed a firm hand on Tyan's shoulder. "No, I can't leave after you came to help. I'm not pushing the dangerous part onto you alone. I'm going too." In that moment, Tyan saw Aiden bathed in a bright yellow light, his expression sincere and resolute. Tears welled up in Tyan's eyes, and his face turned red. "I can't believe it. You're such a great guy, Aiden." I misjudged you." Aiden looked back at him, confusion playing on his face as a bead of sweat trickled down his temple. Why is he crying? How cringy can he get? Aiden thought, holding back a sigh. Then he steeled himself, a deeper concern clouding his mind. If what the ant said is true, chaos isn't the only problem. At the same time, within the dense and shadowy forest of death, nestled in the crater of an extinct volcano, a lone knight walked with a serious expression on his face. This knight eventually arrived in a dimly lit chamber where a black mage was deeply engrossed in his work. The knight approached, his tone tense as he asked, "How far along are you?" Startled, but quickly recognized the knight. "I've finished the basic framework," he replied, calming himself. "Now I just need to melt the essence of the sacrifices and let it absorb into the frame to complete it." Turning his gaze towards the knight, he asked, "The team from the 5th village, have they returned with the sacrifices yet?" The knight, named Dares Kleiman, replied, "They haven't returned yet, but they'll be here soon. Don't worry." The black mage grinned darkly. "Good. That's excellent. Once they're back with the hostages, I'll be able to complete this." In his hands, he held a partially formed red jewel, ominous and pulsing with a faint glow. He continued, "Once this jewel is finished, your lord will be one step closer to his goal." Dares nodded solemnly. "Of course he will. Otherwise, why would we be doing all this?" Dares Kleiman was a loyal subordinate of Sylvetta, and in his mind, he pledged silently, "Lord, please wait just a little longer. I will make sure you become the Archduke of the Sire's Grand Duchy." Elsewhere, back in the forest, Aiden stood still, sweat trickling down his face as a disturbing thought crossed his mind. Did the Dark Mage really take over the hidden village of the Ents inside this volcano crater? Underlord whispered to him. "Surprising, isn't it? Who'd have guessed the mastermind behind all this was that Night King again?" Aiden remembered a conversation with an Ent who had told him, "The one who locked us up? I think his name was Clemming or Clade, something like that." Aiden's eyes widened as he spoke the name in realization. "Don't tell me. It was Dares Kleiman?" Hearing this, the Ent had shouted, "Yes, that's right. That man and the Dark Mages attacked our village, cut down our guardian tree, and locked us up." Back in the present, Aiden's mind raced, piecing it all together. Dares Kleiman, one of the infamous 3 Hounds of Sylvetta, known as the Dark Knight, had joined forces with the Crimson Knight and the Dark Mages. To verify if it was truly the Dark Knight, as the Ent had suggested, Aiden planned to quietly bring the Ent along for reconnaissance. But his patience was running thin. This stubborn Ent had insisted on tagging along, claiming it was his territory and his responsibility. Annoyed, Aiden gritted his teeth, muttering to himself, "This tactless rascal." And to make things worse, why on earth did Lena have to come along too? Just then, a group of large spiders emerged, ready to attack. Seeing them, Lena's eyes lit up in excitement. "So we have spiders here too," she said, taking them out with a single blow. The Ent, terrified, ducked behind Aiden. Watching this scene, Aiden rolled his eyes, thinking she must have tagged along because she was bored. Turning to Tyan, who stood beside him, Aiden asked, "You said Priestess Lena took care of all the Dark Mages and bandits, right?" Tyan, sweating slightly, nodded. "Yes, that's right. She's incredible." Aiden furrowed his brows, thinking this feels off somehow. "Doesn't it seem strange to you too?" Underlord replied dryly, "You don't have to think so hard to see that it's clearly strange. Who wouldn't find someone as crazy as her strange?" At that moment, Lena sent 2 of the spiders flying into the air with one powerful hit. Aiden watched, half impressed and half disturbed, thinking aloud, "The priestess is way too obedient. She actually listens to what we say." Underlord coughed, questioning, "Are you in your right mind? Where exactly do you see her obedience?" Lena, now finished with the spiders, stood with purple blood splattered across her face, smiling with exhilaration. Aiden turned to Underlord, explaining, "You don't understand. Priests from the Divine Carnage cult are lunatics who live for senseless violence. And on top of that, she's far too powerful to be an average priestess." From where he stood, Aiden observed Lena from behind. Not only had she single-handedly handled all the Dark Mages and bandits who destroyed the 4 villages, but she had also effortlessly taken down monsters infused with demonic energy. Around her lay the mangled bodies of the spider monsters, evidence of her unmatched strength. Aiden, even more shocked, turned to Underlord. At her level, she must be a high-ranking priest. Or no, even beyond that. he murmured, feeling increasingly uneasy. Recalling his colleague who had betrayed him, he thought Priestess Lena, she should already be known, like the iron-blooded saintess. Aiden made a mental note to keep a close eye on her. Meanwhile, Lena wiped monster fluid from her mouth with her hand, turning back to the group. "Let's keep moving forward," she said calmly. Finally, they reached the cliff overlooking the crater where the Ent village lay within the extinct volcano. They stood on the high ground, gazing down at the scene below. The Ent's expression darkened as he looked at his village, anger and trembling overtaking him. Aiden glanced at him. "Is that your village?" The Ent gritted his teeth. Yes, there was supposed to be a fairy tree in the center, but his voice cracked as he looked at the tree's remaining stump. Aiden realized the fairy tree was the source of the Ent's power. Cutting it down must have nullified their strength. He thought further. In dark magic, fairies are even more valuable as sacrifices than humans. What is Chaos planning with all those humans and Ents? Suddenly, Aiden froze, his gaze locking onto a figure stepping out of a nearby building. It was Dares Kleiman. I was worried the Ent might be wrong, he thought, but thank God. "Nice to see you, you damn Dark Knight." Tyan noticed Dares too, and his face twisted with anger as he reached for his sword. "So he's the mastermind behind all this, right? I'm going to kill him," he growled. Aiden quickly placed a hand on Tyan's arm. "Wait," he urged. Tyan glared at him, his eyes turning red as he gritted his teeth. "Why? He attacked my territory and took my people as sacrifices. And you want me to just let that slide? He doesn't even look that strong. With Priestess Lena's help, we can take him down easily." Aiden, his expression serious, replied, "Calm down and look around." They scanned the village, realizing that numerous dark mages were stationed throughout the area. Aiden continued, "Dares isn't alone. There are too many dark mages with him. The three of us can't take them on right now." Aiden glanced down at the village below, then turned to Tyan. "Besides, that Dark Knight isn't just any opponent, so let's hold off for now." As he observed Dares, his mind raced. "I know all too well that he's as skilled as Sylvetta, maybe even on the level of a semi-master by now. He's incredibly skilled. Just by his abilities, he's leagues above any knight I've faced so far in this life. Even with the three of us, there's no guarantee we'd win. And if the villagers get involved, we'll suffer heavy losses." Aiden felt a chill as he considered the risks, a drop of sweat trickling down his face. There's got to be a better way to handle this. Just then, Underlord appeared at the cliff's edge, his arms crossed, scanning the scene intently. Aiden raised an eyebrow and called out, "Hey, what are you doing over there?" Underlord didn't turn, his voice serious. "I've sensed an unsettling presence since we entered this forest. Now I know what it is." Aiden scoffed, smirking. "The only unsettling thing I see right now is your rear. Get it out of my face." Underlord's eyes flared as he snapped, "I'm trying to help you. How dare you insult my backside?" Rolling his tongue around his lips, Underlord continued, "A human like you can't sense it, but my refined senses can pick it up instantly." Aiden, visibly annoyed, mockingly replied, "Impressive. So, what did you find out?" Underlord bristled, gritting his teeth. "Don't be shocked when you hear it. Beneath those trees." Aiden's eyes widened, his hands instinctively clenching, veins showing on his wrists. "I see. There have been oddities here, but this explains everything." Suddenly, a thought struck Aiden. "If I can use whatever's under those trees." With a new sense of determination, he said aloud, "I've thought of a way." Tyan's eyes widened with hope. "You mean there's a way out of this?" Everyone turned to look at Aiden, curiosity evident on their faces. Aiden glanced at the Ent. "You said you know where everything in this forest is, right?" The Ent, still intrigued, replied, "Yeah. What about it?" Aiden turned to Tyan, his eyes sharp. "Are you willing to do anything for your people?" Tyan's face hardened, his teeth clenched. "Of course I am," he spat out, his voice fierce. "For my people, I'd fight to the death." Aiden's lips curled into a wild smile. "Really? There's no taking that back, you know." His tone made Tyan falter, a flicker of unease passing over his face as beads of sweat formed on his brow. Turning to Priestess Lena, Aiden said, "Since you're here, Would you mind joining in? It's a fun game. Lena chuckled, a glint of excitement in her eyes. All right, she replied, her voice laced with eagerness. Moments later, on the left side of the crater, the ground shook violently, as though an earthquake had hit. A loud commotion filled the air as Tyan tore through the forest, sprinting at full speed. Behind him, a swarm of massive spider monsters followed, closing in on him. Aiden Remez, you damn bastard! Tyan yelled, glancing over his shoulder with terror. Are you trying to get me killed? On the right side of the crater, a group of ogres bolted away in panic. Their leader shouted frantically, "Run faster!" Behind them, Lena chased with a maniacal laugh, calling out, "This is the best game of tag I've ever played." She launched herself into the air, shouting at the ogres below, "Don't let me catch you, or you're dead." The ogres, terrified, picked up speed, trying desperately to escape her. Watching the chaos unfold, the Ent looked over at Aiden, bewildered. "Are you trying to start a monster wave to scare off the dark mages?" Aiden, his arms crossed as he watched the scene, smirked. "You're half right," he replied coolly. "I'm using these monsters to wake up a real beast, one that'll fight for us. After all, that snake down there must be starving after hundreds of years without a meal." As if on cue, a massive form stirred beneath the trees. Ancient scales shifted as the giant snake slowly opened its eyes, blinking for the first time in centuries. Aiden turned to look at the Ent and noticed him trembling. A small smirk crossed Aiden's face as he asked, "Are you scared?" The Ent, still shaking, quickly replied, "No, I'm not," though sweat trickled down his face. "I just feel angry and ashamed. If we were as strong as you, they wouldn't dare to harm us." Aiden slowly unsheathed his sword, an ominous red energy radiating from the blade. "Don't worry," he said, his voice low and steady. "They'll pay for everything you've been through. They owe me something too." Aiden grinned and glanced back at the Ent. "By the way, I don't think I ever caught your name. What should I call you?" With a determined expression, the Ent replied, "Izzy." "My name is Easy." The red and black aura around Aiden intensified as he gripped his sword. "All right, Easy." He looked at him with a sharp glint in his eye and asked, "Remember what I said back in the 5th village? When I asked you what you'd give me for putting myself in danger to help you?" Easy froze, startled at the reminder, then clenched his fists, saying, "If you manage to save our village." He took a deep breath and continued, shouting, "I swear on my spirit name, I'll give you as many of my tears as you want. I've heard they're valuable to humans." Aiden grinned, nodding. "Deal. Consider it done. But from now on, worry about yourself more than your family." As his eyes widened in shock, sweat forming on his forehead as he stammered, "Well, what did you just say?" At that moment, Beelzebub's voice echoed through the air. "Power of domination. Answer the call of our master." Aiden addressed the sword. Beelzebub summoned the ghost Mephisto. Suddenly, a ghostly figure materialized before Aiden, bowing his head. "You have called me my lord," Mephisto said. Aiden's eyes narrowed slightly as he considered his summon, thinking to himself, "I still haven't perfected this summoning, but it should do for now." Clearing his mind, Aiden looked at Mephisto and issued his command. "You'll find a group of venomous lizards in the lower part of the forest. I want you to drive them toward the crater at the heart of this extinct volcano." Mephisto placed a hand over his chest, bowing deeply. "I have your order, my lord," he replied with unwavering sincerity. Mephisto soared off toward the venomous lizards without hesitation. Watching him disappear, Aiden grinned in satisfaction, thinking to himself, "How convenient it is to have a high-ranking Talos like Mephisto obeying my every command." He clenched his fist with determination. "But I need to get stronger soon, so I can unlock Mephisto's full potential." Aiden turned back to Easy. "All right, we should get moving too," he said. Easy, caught off guard, stammered, "Where are we going?" Aiden chuckled, a glint of anticipation in his eyes. "What do you mean, where? I made a promise, didn't I? We're going to save your village and your family. Let's go." The scene shifted to the crater of the extinct volcano, where Dares Kleiman stood with his arms crossed, his expression dark and serious. Beads of sweat dotted his face as he thought. Why haven't I heard anything from the 5th village crew yet? Could they have been taken out? No, impossible. There's no one here capable of that. Just then, Dares noticed ripples in a still pool of water nearby. His eyes narrowed, suspicion rising. Waves in still water? He glanced around and noticed a strange movement in the trees, which seemed to be swaying slightly, as if disturbed by something moving quickly beneath them. His hand instinctively moved to the hilt of his sword, ready to draw. In the distance, he caught sight of someone running straight toward him. "What's this?" he muttered. "A band of thieves?" But as the figure drew closer, and behind him, a swarm of monstrous creatures, including spider monsters with venomous fangs gleaming in the dim light. Dares scowled, shouting to his men, "Monsters! Defend the lab immediately!" Tyan, sprinting as fast as he could with a mix of terror and determination, shouted at the top of his lungs, "Aiden Remez, I'll kill you for this." Dares glared at the wave of spiders approaching, his jaw clenched. They may be coming in large numbers, but we can handle them. His thoughts were interrupted as he saw yet another wave of creatures emerge from the opposite side. A horde of poison ogres charging with ferocity, with Priestess Lena grinning maniacally behind them. Dare's face went pale. Poison ogres? What in the world are they doing here? He quickly scanned his surroundings, realizing the creatures had moved from the forest depths toward the volcano's crater. And now what? From yet another direction, a group of lizard monsters came charging forward, herded by Mephisto, who grinned wickedly and taunted them. "I'll tear you apart when I catch you." The creatures advanced toward the crater, creating a monstrous convergence around the dark mage's base. Aiden crouched behind one of the hideouts, observing the dark mages and knights scrambling to stop the oncoming monster wave. Nearby, a knight barked orders. "Hey, focus on stopping that monster wave too." Aiden turned to EZ, who looked terrified but determined, and nodded. "Let's go in, EZ." They slipped inside a room where Ez's tribe members were being held. Ez's face lit up with relief as he saw his people. "EZ, are you all right?" One asked, dropping to his knees in front of him. Another added, "Did you come here to save us?" Ez's voice softened with a proud smile. "Didn't I say I would?" But as he looked around, his smile faded. "Why are you the only ones here? Where are the others?" One of the ants, eyes heavy with sorrow, whispered, "We're all that's left, EZ. They took the others as sacrifices." Ez's face fell, and he clenched his fists, whispering, "I was too late." Aiden put a reassuring hand on Ez's shoulder. "This isn't your fault, EZ. It just shows how vile these people are." He then asked EZ to step back, unsheathing his sword. "Everyone, please step back from the bars." In two powerful swings, Aiden shattered the iron bars imprisoning the ants, who stared in awe. Aiden sheathed his sword and addressed them. "I know you must be confused, but I need to know one thing." He paused, then asked, "Do you know where they took the others?" As the words left his lips, he thought to himself, "If I can find where they're keeping them, I might finally figure out what their plan is." Outside, the battle raged as Dares and his squad fought fiercely. Dares cut down monsters with precision and force, while the dark mages used their dark magic to hold back the tide of beasts. The ground became soaked with the monster's purple blood, and its thick, pungent scent filled the air, slowly seeping toward the ancient snake lying dormant underground. Stirred by the scent, the massive serpent's eyes flickered open, its hunger awakened after centuries of slumber. It whispered in a low, rumbling voice, "Hungry." In an instant, the basilisk began slithering up through the earth, a powerful, ancient force propelling it closer to the surface. The tremors from its movement caused the ground to shake, and Dares, in the heat of the battle, whipped his head around, shouting, "Now what is it this time?" Water trembled like a quake was brewing, and even Aiden, still in the hideout, felt the tremors. A satisfied grin crossed his face as he whispered, "Finally, it's awake." The king of vipers, Basilisk. With a mighty roar, the basilisk burst from the water, its monstrous form towering above the battlefield. Every soldier and mage halted, staring in horror at the creature, and Dare's eyes widened in shock. He muttered, "What the?" as sweat dripped down his face. Earlier, when Underlord revealed the presence of the Basilisk, Aiden had approached him with a skeptical expression. "You're saying this is the Basilisk's nest?" Underlord nodded, arms crossed. "This thick, poisonous energy must belong to the Basilisk himself. The King of Vipers has venom so deadly that a mere graze could cripple even a sword master. He's likely been lying dormant here, isolated because his life force weakened. I think the forest of death around us was created by the venom he's exuded for centuries." A bead of sweat rolled down Aiden's face as he processed the information. "That's odd. Basilisks usually stay in the southern forests, far from here and in warmer climates. What would he be doing in a place like this?" Underlord's eyes narrowed, irritated. "If I had all the answers, do you think I'd be wasting my time stuck in a weak human body like yours? All I know is he's been starving for hundreds of years, and when he awakens, he'll be ravenous." Now, in the present, the basilisk had emerged from the water, its gargantuan form rising, casting a shadow over everything. Its roar shook the air, and everyone froze. Dares Kleiman, in shock, gripped his sword tightly as he muttered, "Damn it, a basilisk of all things?" Dares steadied himself, a grim determination taking hold. "We're not backing down. I won't let it interfere with my lord's plan." He raised his sword, shouting, "Come at me, you damn snake." Meanwhile, within the darkened lab inside the crater, a black mage worked feverishly over a strange jewel, grinning as he listened to the chaos outside. "A monster wave? Perfect," he muttered. "I can use the souls of both monsters and humans to complete the jewel faster than expected. And if I finish it early, perhaps he'll finally acknowledge me." Just then, a shadow fell over him, and the mage looked up to see Aiden standing beside him, eyeing the jewel with a curious smile. "What's this?" Aiden murmured, inspecting the jewel closely. "Doesn't look like an ordinary gem." Before the mage could react, Aiden placed a firm hand on his head, smashing it violently into the table. The mage's head struck with such force that blood sprayed, staining the gem in front of him as his life was snuffed out in an instant. Aiden, still reeling from the jewel's unexpected reaction, remembered that it had warned him about a jewel forged through sacrificial rituals. Examining it closer, he thought this must be what it was talking about. But what's it for? Just as he reached out to pick up the jewel, an intense light erupted from it, catching Aiden off guard. He jerked back, startled. "What's going on?" he muttered as the system suddenly appeared before him. "System notification. You have satisfied the condition for the hidden piece. The incomplete jewel has been absorbed by the user." The jewel's light intensified, and before Aiden could react, it was fully absorbed into his body. He clenched his fist, feeling the faint pulse of energy within him, but no immediate change. What kind of twisted magic did these dark mages create? He thought, sweat beading on his brow. He clenched his fist tightly, thinking, the system said it was incomplete, but I have no idea what it does or how to get it out. Aiden put his hands behind his head, mumbling to himself, "Guess it's just another piece of baggage I'll have to carry for now." At that moment, Underlord appeared with a scoff. "Did you just call me baggage?" he huffed, clearly offended. Aiden chuckled as he continued walking, saying casually, "I didn't mean you, Underlord. Anyway, shall we go finish this?" Underlord, still annoyed, shouted after him, "Answer me." Outside, the basilisk was wreaking havoc, its venomous fog spreading through the area, immobilizing anyone caught in its path. Dares, trembling and barely able to stand, as he struggled against the overwhelming venom. "This poison, I can't move at all." Desperation set in, and he thought if only my lord were here, he could take this monster down in one strike. Suddenly, the basilisk slithered closer, towering over him. Gritting his teeth in defiance, Dares raised his sword, bringing it before his face as he struggled to draw power. "If I could just once copy my lord's sword technique." With a surge of determination, his sword began to emit a blood-red aura. Dares tightened his grip, channeling every ounce of his strength, and swung at the basilisk with all his might, the red aura blazing around his blade as he struck. Dares landed a powerful, final blow against the basilisk's head, his sword crackling with a blood-red aura. The basilisk let out a thunderous cry of pain, its life extinguished in an instant. Exhausted, Dares staggered, using his sword as a crutch to support his weight, a faint smirk on his face as he murmured to himself, "I did it. Am I closer to wielding the sword like my lord now?" Suddenly, a cold, unfamiliar voice rang out behind him. "Congratulations on becoming a sword master, Dark Knight. And goodbye." Dares looked up, startled. Just as he turned, Aiden struck and blood splattered from the wound. Aiden's eyes gleamed with a white-hot fury. "Wait in hell," he said to Dares, "and I'll be sending your lord to join you soon enough." Dares locked eyes with Aiden, confusion and shock in his fading gaze. "Who are you?" he managed to gasp. Aiden's face twisted with anger. "Me?" he growled. "I'm someone your lord once called a comrade." Turning to his sword, Aiden commanded, "Beelzebub, devour him." As Beelzebub's dark energy engulfed Dares, he cried out in agony, eyes wide with desperation. "I need to tell my lord. I finally was able to be of use." But Beelzebub consumed him completely, leaving only his sword behind. Aiden, sheathing his own weapon, muttered, "Loyal to the end? Dares?" Sylvetta Shure found himself a devoted dog. He glanced over at the basilisk's enormous corpse, its mouth wide open. Aiden walked toward it thoughtfully. Didn't expect him to actually take down the basilisk. Just goes to show how strong Sylvetta's soldiers are. Shrugging, he smirked. Well, it all worked out. Time to put this snake to good use. Aiden stepped into the basilisk's mouth, scanning its massive fangs and thick hide. Just then, Underlord appeared beside him, eyeing him suspiciously. "What in the world are you doing inside a dead basilisk's mouth?" Aiden, eyes gleaming with excitement and a wild grin on his face, replied, "Since we're here, might as well take everything of value. The fangs can be forged into deadly weapons, and the leather will make excellent armor." Most importantly, Aiden took out a bottle, carefully collecting the basilisk's venom. "This venom is incredibly potent. With it, I can create a brew that will make us immune to poisons." After gathering every valuable piece he could, Aiden capped the bottle of venom and straightened up, a satisfied grin on his face. "Now that I've taken everything worthwhile, let's go check on the Ints." Underlord called out to Aiden with an unusual seriousness, snapping him from his task. Aiden shot him a confused look. "What is it?" he asked, noting the stern expression on Underlord's face. Underlord pointed toward the basilisk's mouth. "Look at the roof of its mouth," he said, eyes narrowed. "There's something there that a snake like this shouldn't possess." Curious, Aiden walked over, hands on his hips as he examined the area Underlord had indicated. "What gives you the right to call it lowly?" he murmured. But as he squinted at the object, a flash of recognition crossed his face. "Is this the demonic spirit stone?" He picked up the dark, glimmering stone, holding it up to the light. As he examined it, he thought, a demonic spirit stone, a vessel that contains concentrated dark magic energy. So that's why the monsters in this forest are so unnaturally strong. But why was it hidden here, inside the basilisk's mouth? Suddenly, the stone pulsed with a dark aura that seemed to draw on Aiden's energy. Startled, he felt a strange vibration from his subspace pocket, as though something inside was reacting to the stone. With a sharp pop, a pendant sprang out of his subspace pocket, hanging in midair. Aiden froze. He remembered this pendant. It was something he'd picked up in the Lich's dungeon, a gift his former master had left for him. Could the demonic spirit stone be reacting to it? Without warning, the stone floated from his hand and affixed itself onto the pendant, fusing as though it had always belonged there. Aiden held the pendant in his hand, staring at it in shock. Was this stone originally part of the pendant? He wondered. A glowing screen suddenly appeared before him, displaying Barak's pendant. Increases affinity with attributes such as magic and darkness. The pendant's full powers have yet to be unlocked. Soul-bound to its wearer until death. Sweat trickled down Aiden's face as he read the message. A dark mage-exclusive artifact? And it's soul-bound? Frustration surged through him, and he hurled the pendant away, shouting, "Why are all these cursed items latching onto me without my permission? Get off me already! As the pendant tumbled through the air, it shimmered, slowly vanishing only to reappear, fastened securely around his neck. Aiden's face twisted in fury. Damn it! Why are these things doing whatever they please? He pulled at the pendant, even using his teeth to try and break the cord, but it held firm. At that moment, someone started to materialize. The figure that appeared was none other than Rabbits, who, without seeming to notice Aiden's fury, clapped his hands with excitement. Congratulations on clearing the dungeon, he exclaimed. Aiden, however, was anything but pleased. His eyes blazed red with anger, still clawing at the pendant's cord around his neck. Rabbits? He growled, advancing toward him with clenched fists. Dungeon? What dungeon are you talking about? Rabbits froze, his excitement turning into pure terror as he saw Aiden's rage up close. He began trembling, trying to hold back a nervous laugh. It seems I may have made a small mistake. He looked away, barely able to meet Aiden's furious gaze. Aiden leaned in closer, voice sharp with barely contained fury. You said I cleared the dungeon? Then where's the core? Should I just go and crush it to pieces right now? His voice echoed and Rabbits flinched, visibly shaking as he stammered. Please, calm down, Aiden, no need for that. At that moment, Underlord's gaze fell upon the pendant still fixed around Aiden's neck, and his eyes widened in recognition. That pendant, he muttered, his usual dismissive tone replaced by shock and intensity. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. If you'd like to see more manhwa recaps like this, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. That way, you'll stay updated on all my future content. Until next time, take care.